Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network invite you to discover your mission. A brand new in-depth monthly video series featuring engaging Catholic speakers who will challenge you to live your life abundantly. For only $25 a month, you will receive a personal monthly mission, including 3 full-length inspirational talks that build upon a new theme each month. Sign up for the Discover Your Mission tier at patreon.com/Patchwork Heart Ministry today.
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. And thank you so much for joining us here on Patchwork Heart Radio, Patchwork Heart Ministry, Fiat Ministry Network. Wherever you are listening to this, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of our ministry, which is simply to sow hope into broken hearts. As always, I am joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. And welcome, Ann. Good evening. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome. I'm just awesome today. So good to be alive. So good to be here with our amazing guest and with you, Bill, as always.
Yes. Why don't you tell us about our guest?
Yes, we have Donna A. Heckler. She's a friend of ours, of Patchwork Heart Radio and of the TV show Journeys in Faith, where she was a guest. And Donna is an author and also an advisor, and she is a global marketing executive who's been blessed with a prominent career in the corporate sector, recognized as a thought leader in brand and marketing strategy. She is co-author of the book, The Truth About Creating Brands People Love. Donna penned the acclaimed book, Living Like a Lady When You Have Cancer, after her stage 3 cancer diagnosis. Donna is a Catholic author and speaker with a knack for insightful and engaging storytelling. And she is the author of the new book called Marketing God, which I have in my hand right now. And since this is a podcast, nobody can see me holding the book. And I love this book so much. It's inspired strategies for building the kingdom. So welcome, Donna.
Oh, thank you, Anne. It's so good to be with both of you.
Yeah, it's great.
It really is. And you are such a gifted author, and you and I are getting to know each other because you're even going to be helping me with some work with the foundation that I represent. That's the St. Raymond Onatus Foundation, because Marketing God really is for all of us who are looking to evangelize, all nonprofits, people who are in ministry. You know, it's even for people who are inspired by their own faith and want to know how to speak to people about what we believe and the importance of faith in God and in the church. So I commend you for writing such an amazing book and for all the great work you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You know, that book was sort of, it was interesting. I don't recall if I told you how it came about, but
please do.
The idea of it actually came to me at Mass. So it was, I would go to morning Mass, right? And I'm at morning Mass, and this idea pops in my head, write a book called Marketing God. And my reaction was, oh my gosh, who said that to me? And because I knew my feeble brain wouldn't have come up with that. And then I thought it must have been the devil, right? Because it just sounded like such a bad title. And then I thought, wait a second, if I'm any good at marketing, the devil wouldn't want me to write this. And then it occurred to me where maybe the inspiration was coming from. And I have to tell you, I was terrified to write this. I mean, yes, I've done all this global marketing and I've done big brands. I've done that stuff, right? But somehow applying it to faith, it was scary for me, quite frankly. But as the book unfolded, I was like, you know, there's just a lot of things that I knew from corporate, and I think they matter for parishes and ministries. So I'd say all that by way of saying thank you for your kind words about it. because it was a scary endeavor for me.
Well, I truly mean it, because I have the book itself, and you and I have talked about it. And, you know, it's the kind of book that if you are a pastor, if you work at a church, if you're in any kind of ministry, and as I said, even at, you know, a couple paragraphs ago, that if you if you have a heart for evangelizing, this is a book for you.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's easy to read. I think you told me there's 40 chapters, is it?
Yep.
40 chapters, and each has a statement and only maybe a few pages to read and some reflections.
Right. Well, and that was the entire intent. I mean, you know, when you do any of our careers, right? You're in marketing, you're in law, you're in finance, whatever it is we're in, we've spent years figuring these things out. And so you can't possibly put it all out there. And so my thought was, what are maybe 40 insights? What are some of the best insights that I make sure I always use? And now let's apply them to our faith. And what I tried to do in the book was to pull secular examples, because we all know those. You know, I used to run marketing, I think we mentioned that before, for Energizer, right? So everybody knows Energizer, and they know the
That's right.
going and going. So if I use that as an example, then people resonate with it because they get it. So we tried to make sure in each chapter there's a secular example, and then we would try and apply it to faith, so that we could sort of see how that idea might manifest itself for a parish or a religious order or ministry or whatever you're doing from evangelizing perspective. So, and then there's a chapter in there called Marketing and Evangelizing Are Different, or are Similar but Distinct, something along that as a title. Because they do feel like they're really connected, but there's some elements to them, at least for me, that seemed a little bit different. So I would try to maybe articulate how I view evangelization and marketing in the context of evangelization. So,
yeah, you did an amazing job. And I think through the Holy Spirit and how God came to you with that title. I mean, the title says a lot, really does.
A lot. So I should, if I can, finish the story about the title, because, you know, in typical Donna form, I mean, I know your listeners don't know me, but you do. I can argue a point. So I was arguing this with God. I was like, no, you do not want a woman named Heckler to write a book called Marketing God. You just don't. And so it was during the rosary that we always say rosary after Mass, that I'm praying this and arguing with God. And this thought came to me. And the thought was, if you can help people be loyal to batteries, can't you help them be loyal to me? If you can
simple, but true.
Can't you help them be loyal to me? And I was like, okay, I get it. You win. I can't argue with that. You're right. And that's what marketing is for me. It's about loyalty. And that became sort of the North Star for the book. How do we help people be loyal to them?
That's a really good insight. I think it's a really good insight for our faith, too. Maybe just touch a little bit upon loyalty, Donna, because, you know, I think in our disposable culture, you know, we run from one thing to the next, and we are fascinated by the current trend, right? The current brand, the popular brand, and it seems to come in and go out just as fast as the next one does. And so there's something to be said, though, about being loyal and true to a certain product out there in the world, but also loyal and true to God in good times and bad. And so I think there's a lot of really important lessons there. Maybe you just want to touch on a little bit on loyalty.
Sure. So, you know, let me start from a secular perspective first, and then we'll sort of parlay that into faith. So from a secular marketing perspective, when we think about loyalty, we want, at least this is how I operated. I tried to be a good marketer. I would try and offer a customer or client something that was valuable to them. And when I did, I would try to always honor my promise. So So for instance, with Energizer, if I told you it was long-lasting, that battery had to be long-lasting, right? That's how it had to work. I had to honor my promise. And I had to listen to somebody to understand what they needed. And when that happened, this was a two-way street. I'm hearing what they need. I'm making sure that my battery is long-lasting. And they develop loyalty to the brand, but also I'm loyal to them as a user, right? So loyalty becomes the utmost thing, because in the end, when you're loyal to something, you no longer have to think about it. You absolutely go there and rely on it. So let's apply that to faith. If we are loyal to God, then we are absolutely relying on God. God has offered so many promises to us. We have so many promises through the Bible, through our faith, and He honors those promises. But likewise, we need to continue to engage with Him. We need to share what's going on in our lives, and then He brings those promises back to us. And it's that two-way street that takes us down this path to constant loyalty to God. But to your point, Phil, it is so often that there's a shiny object. It's like, oh, look at this, or oh, look at that. And we turn our heads to the shiny object. And what happens when we turn our heads to a shiny object? We're turning it away from God. So the whole point in loyalty for me is to make sure that we are ever vigilant on what is our focus. And we as Catholics are focused on God. We're focused on our faith. We're focused on following Christ. And in doing that, that is where our faith deepens, and that is where God continues to invite us into a deeper place. And I could probably ramble on some of these things for quite a while.
Oh, in a great way, though.
That was helpful.
I love talking with you, Donna.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I think it's so practical too, right? I think what you're talking about is such a practical thing that almost actually every person can grasp it. Every listener that's listening to this right now can grasp what you're talking about and can understand it because of the real world examples, and because of, this is basically how we should approach almost every aspect of our lives, right? Okay, we're gonna be faithful to this. We're gonna be loyal to this because we're invested in this, because we like it, because we enjoy it, because there's some aspect that attracts us to it, and I don't have to turn my head and look at all these other shiny objects, as you said. It's just, let's take a look at being loyal to the most faithful the most faithful God that we have. I mean, God is going to be faithful to us no matter what, right? He's bought into our brand of humanity 100%.
Oh, that is so perfect.
That is, Phil. That was great.
Yes.
Very creative and spirit inspired.
Yeah. One thing I would offer is that as I wrote the book, one concern I had is I didn't want people to think that I was encouraging individuals to become loyal just to their church or just to their ministry. I see those as pathways to being loyal to God. So I sort of put that out there because we don't want to stop. We don't want to, okay, I'm going to church every day, I'm really loyal to my parish. That's not the end point that we're seeking. The end point we're seeking is that loyalty to God. And so trying to make sure that was incorporated in the book for me was really critical. What's that end point? Because again, as humans, it's easy. Okay, I'm there. I'm really loyal to this, right? And I'm done. No, we're not done. We're not, because that's not what the end point is. The end point is God.
So well said. So well said. You've an amazing faith journey yourself. And I mentioned when I read your little bio that you had, after your stage 3 cancer diagnosis, a lot of things started to happen there. I wondered if you could take us on that journey. For people who don't know you, I think you just have a beautiful faith journey to share with us.
Oh, well, thank you, Anne. Of course, I'm happy to be here. So my career was in this global marketing, right, which is really busy, really crazy busy. We all have crazy busy lives. Mine just happened to occur at work. So I managed big budgets. I ran big brands. I traveled the world. I had lots of people. And then I had what I called a timeout. And I like to say, in fact, my speech is that God gave me a timeout. In fact, he gave me two. The first timeout was a really freak leg injury, and we weren't sure I'd ever walk again. I do walk, and all was fine. But it was maybe about a month after I was just getting off crutches that we discovered stage 3 breast cancer. And so here I am. I've just gone through all this stuff with the leg, and now I'm going through all the treatments for cancer. And so in the period of 18 months, I had 12 surgeries, I had chemo, and I had radiation. And the one thing that I had to do was just sit quietly. For somebody who was always crazy busy and running all over the place, I had no choice but to sit quietly. And I think it was in those moments that God started speaking to me. That, or maybe I should say, God was always speaking to me. I just wasn't quiet enough to hear him, right? So I started listening in the quiet of the healing. And so when I was finished with all the treatments, I was still at work. I worked the entire time. We couldn't get my cancer markers down. And my oncologist, 3 years after all my treatments, invited me to leave my career. That's how she put it. I invite you to leave your career. That was a big deal for me. So I did, and I wondered what I was going to do next. But by this point, I was listening to God quite a bit and started to do things like go to daily mass. I had the time to do that. I didn't make the time before, but I easily could now. And I started to lean into my faith, is how I would say it. I was asked to speak about my faith and what happened with the cancer. And I was brought up that you don't really talk about faith. It's how you live your life. I think a lot of us are brought up that way.
Yes.
So my reaction was, there's no way I'm going to talk about my faith. I don't do that, And people were like, well, we'll give you an award if you do. Well, maybe I don't want the award, right? And I just really had a hard time with this. But again, I was listening to God, and I gave this talk called, and then God gave me a timeout. And for a marketer who has spoken all over the world, I've never had a standing ovation before. And when I finished giving that talk, people were standing and they were crying and they were saying, we all go through these things. We go through bad things in our life, and your witness of it is so helpful for us. So that was sort of the shortened version of the journey. But those things opened up the door for me to do so much more, for me to support various not-for-profits, ministries, religious orders with marketing, for me to write books, for me to speak on faith. I mean, there's so many things now that I do, and they are 100% centered on faith. And so that is just this beautiful outcome as a result of this journey I've been on.
Thank you so much. I know there's a lot more to your journey, and you shorten it up because we do have lots of other things to talk about. But I would invite people to go to your website and get to know not only you, but also the great things that you're doing. And her website, again, is DonnaAHeckler.com. Don't forget the A, that's her middle initial. And she's got a beautiful website. And it's all about Be Radiant. I wondered if you could speak about Be Radiant.
Oh, of course. I love to talk about being radiant. So Be Radiant, this idea of it actually came to me when I had cancer. And I was really sick. I mean, honestly, when you go through all of that in a short amount of time, it's hard for a body to process that. So I was going through one of my final chemos, and I was so ill from that I could hardly lift my head. I would have friends come by and bring me soup. And this one friend, Mary Beth, was coming by to bring me soup for lunch. And usually I would have a wig on the table at the front of the house so that I could throw the wig on and say hello and try and be somewhat okay, right? And I called her, texted her that morning and said, I can't even get up off the sofa. You'll just have to come in on your own and I won't have a wig on. So she comes in and she takes a look at me. And you can see she's just overwhelmed by the appearance of cancer, quite frankly. And she said, well, why don't I go into the kitchen and I'll get our soup ready for lunch. And she walks in the kitchen, and from where I'm sitting, I have sort of this odd angle view, and I could see into the kitchen window. and she's fumbling with the top of the soup container, and she's crying. But you know what really got me? She hadn't taken her purse off her shoulder. Somehow she was so overwhelmed with what she was seeing. She hadn't done something as simple as that. And as I laid on that sofa, I said to myself, well, probably somebody gave me these words. You need to be radiant for Mary Beth today, Donna. You need to be radiant. And I remember thinking, how is that possible? And the reaction was, you can use your eyes, and you can use your smile, and you can let her know it'll be okay. And she came back with the soup, and I don't know that we even had one sip of it. But I tried just to smile to her, and I really tried to look at her with love and let her know everything was going to be okay. And she smiled, and that's when I knew that we were getting through to her, and it wasn't me, right? It was God. And that became my mantra. That became this idea that we can radiate God. We can let God shine through no matter where we are in our lives. Even when I was so sick, I could look at somebody and open my eyes up to love and to God, and He would do the work. He would shine through and touch her. So that became this mantra, and so now when I speak, I talk about radiance. But importantly, I think I pray about radiance. I try and find radiance in my everyday life myself. I still use it all the time. It inspires me to let God shine through.
Well, what comes to my mind is the idea of survival and thriving. And even if you're going through some kind of a trial, you can still, in some ways, as hard as this might seem, you can still thrive. Am I right? I mean, you would know better than I on this topic.
No, you absolutely are right. I think that was the piece that was so odd, if you will, to me, is here I am at this really dark point where I can't even say 2 words. But it wasn't up to me. If I was radiant, that meant I was allowing God to shine through. He was doing the work. He was touching other people. It wasn't me. And that God is there even in those darkest moments. And I felt that because I saw Mary Beth's reaction. That wasn't of me. That was of God. And so, yeah, radiance is there all the time because God is with us all the time. If we allow Him to shine through us.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I know that there's people who are listening, Donna, we're going through this pandemic right now. I mean, I'm kind of hoping we're on the tail end of it, but who knows, right? Who knows?
Yes.
Pray to God, I bless Him myself right now, Lord. But but at the end of the day, as they say, there's people who are going through some rough times, and people who are either sick or lost their jobs, or something. It could be anything. So I think hearing your story about how God shined through you at that moment, and how as hard as it was for you, you kind of just let God come through your smile and your eyes. That says a lot to all of us about how we can still be, and I'll throw it in quotes because it really means something, happy, because the happy is more of that joy that you can get from living with God, if I'm correct.
Yes, no, I think you're absolutely correct. It reminds me of just this past weekend, if I may share another story. You I have plenty, and don't you? So this past weekend, my nephew was married, and he's so faith-filled, and his now wife, so faith-filled. They are so fabulous. They were both, and she still is focused missionaries, and so joyful, and just amazing people. Now, I know I'm biased because it's my godson, right? But I couldn't go to the wedding because of COVID. Everything has been shut down.
No.
They couldn't have more than the immediate family, maybe 20, 30 people at most. And so I'm watching their wedding on Zoom. And let me tell you, I was not so radiant as I was getting dressed for the wedding, because I thought, I'm still getting dressed. I'm going to do this as if I'm going to the wedding, right? And then the cameras came on. And you know what I noticed? I was watching the wedding from the front. I don't know about you or your listeners, but whenever I go to a wedding, like I sit in the pew and I see the back of the groom and I see the back of the bride and I see the beautiful back of the dress, but I don't see their faces. At this wedding, while I wasn't there in person and it was heartbreaking for me, I saw their joy. I saw their love for each other. I saw their love for God. I saw their faith. I saw things that I would never have seen had I been there in person. And as I watched the wedding, I realized how radiant they were and what, in the end, the blessing it was for me to have been able to see it that way. And, I guess I share that because in the midst of COVID, like, there's hard things happening. And at the same time, maybe those hard things are causing us either to take a time out and see things differently, or perhaps like me, see faces at a wedding that I wouldn't have seen before. I just think that in the course of all of these things, there are still opportunities for us to find the radiance, as hard as that can be sometimes.
You said that so well. And I think that's a great message for people right now during this COVID-19. I don't know if I want to call it a lockdown, but somewhat of a lockdown still for some people, to hear that there was something good that came out of you being able to watch it on Zoom.
Right.
There is something good about it because, let's face it, with Zoom, we could do something even like we're doing right now. I mean, we're doing this podcast. It's almost like the three of us are together. Right. And talking to people about your great message. So,
yeah, there's something.
I look at that as a plus.
About it. Absolutely, there's something beautiful about this. If we kind of look at it from the perspective of gratitude and not one of, oh my gosh, I've got to do this, via Zoom or via like the relationships that I know Ann and I have created doing this podcast, and basically over Zoom. We've met once in person for about an hour, Ann. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And only because God wanted that to happen. But the reality is that you can experience, just like Donna experienced at this wedding, something fresh, something new. God is doing something new in your relationships, in your life, through this COVID. It just is a matter of coming at it from a perspective, looking at it from a different perspective. And that's hard, especially when there's a lot of sadness, a lot of worry, there's a lot of fear being perpetuated all throughout society, right? I mean, there's a lot of that going on right now. But if you can take a step back and go, okay, what are the good things? And, how can I, as Donna, you talked about earlier, being radiant through, the darkest moments, how can I shine God's light into this situation? How can I put God in this situation? And once he's in the situation, it drastically changes the situation. That's what God does. So, I just think your example is wonderful. And I just encourage everybody out there that's listening to this today, find the one or two good things that are going on in your life and allow that to shine through you to kind of scatter the darkness that's surrounding the other areas of your life or of your home or wherever else you are. Just use the good and be gracious and thank God for the good that he is providing in this time.
I love that, Bill, the way you articulated that. And it caused me to think another thing that I always have to do is I have to get myself out of the way. So I don't know about you two, but I really like to be in control. So, I like to be in charge of everything and make it all happen. And part of this journey, for instance, even with the wedding, is to recognize that I was not in control. I was taking a step back. I was having to get out of my own way in order to appreciate what God was presenting to me in the love that I was witnessing of this wonderful couple. So I just sort of layered that on, that it's, it's letting God shine through But for me, I gotta say, God, I get the heck out of here. Let God do the work, right?
Yeah.
And I see God in your smile right now, because as you're talking about it, the joy that you were able to experience, and I hope that your godson and his wife are able to hear this podcast, because this is a real treasure for them to hear how much you were affected by that. And thank you for speaking to those who are listening who are going through rough times, because even people of faith go through rough times too, and might even doubt whether God is doing anything.
Oh,
Sometimes that happens in life, that they can doubt whether, hey, is God doing anything at all for me and my
right,
family or my situation? Because it
right,
doesn't seem like it.
right. I even experienced that as I went through the leg injury, right? I'm sitting here in a wheelchair with a cast from toe to hip. I mean, my leg was straight out the entire time. And I couldn't move. I couldn't work. I was on disability for 6 months. I mean, this was just not how I lived my life. But as I went through that, I started seeing more things, right? I started to see the flowers in my own backyard. I started to see and witness God in ways I hadn't before. So I really thought, okay, good. I learned, God, I get it. I'm just going to go to work from 8 to 6, not 8 to 9. I got the whole thing figured out now. And when I give my talk about God giving me a timeout, it's when I realized that He wasn't done with me. I thought that I had learned so much. I hardly scratched the surface of what I was supposed to learn and understand. And I think those are hard things for us. We're in the midst of something really difficult when we know that we're really growing in that moment. What we don't understand is how much future growth is available to us if we allow it. We just see this little piece and we know it's so much better. Or maybe it's just a little bit better and we're wishing it was so much better. You just have no idea what all God has in store for us if we allow Him.
I admire all that you have been through and how you articulated. I'm picturing this cast and 6 months and thinking, my goodness, God bless you. Really, honestly. And looking at you now, how you're a very positive person. And I know that, faith is not, it's not about the power of positive thinking. I know you know that. I know that. Bill knows that. It is about faith in Christ and a relationship with Him. And He's the one that carries our burdens, right? I mean, He's the one that does it. And that's what the positive part is, right? I mean, the positive part is that you have this best friend who's with you all the time. This best friend who cares about you.
Yes, yes. And the thing is, it's not that I wasn't Catholic before this. I'm a greater Catholic. I mean, and I went to church every Sunday. I sort of thought I was a good Catholic. But what I recognized was that I was following the rules. I did what Catholics did because my career, my success was because of my head. It was, I lived in my head. I did my work. And so I applied that to everything. And I think God used these timeouts to say, wait a second, we got a heart here as well. And we need to open that up so I can shine through it. So I just share that because, somebody once said to me, well, so you must have become Catholic after this. No, I was always Catholic. It's just that my approach to my faith opened up because not because I was willing, I was forced to sit quietly with that, right? But that made all the difference.
Yeah, you're such an authentic person and such a good person. And I'm just so blessed by knowing you. I want to invite people again, just, people who are coming in halfway through, to go to DonnaAHeckler.com and get the book that I love so much called Marketing God, Inspired Strategies for Building the Kingdom. And it's got 40 chapters. They're short. They're easy to read. And it says here on the back cover that 40 identified corporate strategies that are most critical to faith-based organizations. So if somebody works for a church, if you're in ministry, if you're a nonprofit, whoever you are, this book is for you. And also people who really care about their faith and they want to evangelize.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. And I mentioned at the beginning that you're going to be helping me with the foundation that I'm the director for as well. And I'm looking forward to that, the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation. So keep an eye on our website for something going on there with with Donna at nonatus.org, because I know we're going to be talking about doing something together related to all of this.
Right. Absolutely. See what we can do. Yep.
That's right.
So I have a totally random different story to tell if you'd like to hear it.
Please,
Yeah,
please.
absolutely.
About the middle A. The middle A. So it's Donna A. Heckler. So my middle name is Agnes. Oh, now growing
There's
up.
a story for that one.
Oh,
Hey, who's Agnes, Bill? Tell us.
Agnes is my
Hello,
wife.
Agnes.
this podcast.
My wife is named Agnes.
Okay. So growing up, I was totally teased. Totally teased. That middle name, it was horrible. And so I would not use it at all. In fact, for many years, most of my life, in fact, until maybe about the past 5 or 6, it was just Donna Heckler. I wouldn't acknowledge it. I had nothing to do with it. Now, it's a long line. That name has been used in our family for years. It's a very Catholic family, and I'm the last of the Agneses on the Heckler line. So I was not using this name at all, and I had gone through cancer. In fact, I was in the middle of it, and I get together with a friend of mine, and she is a surgical oncologist, so she treats breast cancer patients. And she says, I said, well, what's the first thing you do when you go into the operating room? And she said, honestly, the first thing I do is I pray to St. Agnes. I all but fell off my chair. I said, why? And she goes, and she's not Catholic. She said, I think she said that you can say for breast cancer patients. And so I always start by praying to St. Agnes. So I went home, and within seconds, I'm Googling what St. Agnes, a patron saint of. For young women, there's many things to it, but in fact, it's not breast cancer. That's St. Agatha, by the way. But I was so struck by that I thought, you know what? I need to not be afraid. And I started really researching and thinking about St. Agnes and learning about her and her life. And I realized that while I was always teased, that name is really meaningful to me in very spiritual and faith-based ways, not just as a family name. So I'm still a little terrified to say I'm Donna Agnes Heckler, but I will say I'm Donna A. Heckler, and I use A now in everything. That's why I'm a little bit insistent about it being in the website. I know that makes it hard. It's Donna, 2 A's, Heckler, right? But the A is so meaningful. Because there's history to it, there's faith to it, and I was awakened to what it meant because of the cancer.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was absolutely beautiful. And I have a huge smile on my face because I'm looking at Zoom and watching Bill too, as his wife Agnes, and yes,
My wife's
yes.
first name is Agnes. So.
Wow.
Exactly why both of us are nodding and smiling and everything too, because there's a connection there. And how beautiful to know about St. Agnes and what it really meant to you. And I have a feeling it'll mean more than just to you listening and to others. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what a powerful story. And I think oftentimes too, I have a similar story like that as well, where my confirmation name it ends up being David, because my middle name is David, and I'm William David III, David III, right? So I wanted to pick a different confirmation name other than David, but my grandfather had taken David and my father had taken David. So my mom and dad go, you're going to take David. And I'm like, well, that's not my choice. Technically it kind of might invalidate the sacrament, from not being able to choose your own name. And but the name I wanted to choose was St. Boniface. And now I, in 6th grade, enjoyed the name Boniface because of how it sounded, right? Um, but and my mom and dad thought I was being rebellious, and they forced me to take David. So my name on the confirmation certificate is William David David, right?
Oh,
And so,
God
but
bless.
right, but you know what? I mean, years later, I've always had this intrigue with Saint Boniface because I did research him when I was in middle school, and I did finally years ago. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I sent my mother the story about him chopping down this pagan tree, and how the Christmas tree got kind of its name from Saint Boniface and how it came to be. And my mom goes, "Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't let you choose Boniface. I didn't realize what a powerful saint he was." And then, and so you know what? There's the similarity in that, like, okay, we don't realize, sometimes the power of the name, and even if maybe we're goofing around or we're thinking, oh, I don't want to truly reveal that, right now, there's something there that God is prompting. Okay, you know what? I pray to this, use this, and so for you, definitely, and for me in the same boat there. It's like, yeah, there's something in the power of a name, the power of a name.
There is, and you're right. And you start peeling it back. It's like this onion. You keep finding deeper and deeper layers to it, all coming from God. I remember, I've loved Mother Teresa. I mean, who hasn't, right? But I've just really followed and loved her, and watched everything and read everything I possibly could. And it was maybe a year after I had started using Donna A. Heckler that I was watching a movie and found out that her given name was Agnes.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. It was.
I all but melted down. I was like, oh my heavens, I've been ignoring this name. I've been pushing this away. And yet it really is an avenue to open me up to deeper faith, to all these special people who have this name. And what have they done? Lean into it, Donna, right? Lean into it. So.
I love that we're talking about this. This is so great. Thank you, because I know that that's affecting people. You know, there's always a reason, right?
Yeah.
Every conversation has a reason.
And research your name, right? Research your name. If you have an odd, weird name, you might not like it. Research what it means, and research the saint behind it. If you're Catholic, and sometimes people aren't named after Catholic saints, and that's okay. But research the etymology of the name, and understand where it's coming from, and understand the personality, because God gives you the name. God gives it to you.
That's right. I agree with that. When I was growing up, I mean, my name's Anne Marie is my formal name, 2 words, and Anne. And I didn't know when I was a little kid that was Jesus's grandmother, pretty much, right? I mean, Mary's mother.
Yeah.
And I had a very close relationship with my mother's mother. And when she died, I mean, I was pretty devastated. I was 28, and we were very, very close. And her faith inspired me. But it hasn't been until my, middle years and older a little bit here that I understand now that whole idea of Jesus's grandmother and the role of the grandmother. I'm not there yet, but I can imagine that will take on a meaning of its own once my kids have their own children. The role of grandmother. So
Absolutely.
And I know, Bill, you understand that. Bill just, his grandmother passed away this past summer, and God rest her soul.
Yeah, and much like you, I was live streaming the funeral.
Yep. I have to do a few of those too this year, just horrible.
Yeah. But I mean, there is grace in that. I'll just say I had a opportunity to my grandmother talked to me many times about reading a poem at her funeral, and she wrote this poem, and she had asked me to do it, and I said, absolutely, Gran. When you die, I'll read this poem, and I couldn't attend the funeral to read the poem. So my dad said to me, because he was able to go in for the funeral, and my mom and some of the immediate family was able to be there. I said to my dad and my mom, I said, just email me the poem or screenshot it to me, and I will read it and I will record it using audio, and you can play it at the funeral. So now this poem that was recorded, I put background music to it. I made it sound really pretty because this is what this is what we do here at part of the ministry, right? And it now has become immortalized. Like people keep playing it on their phones. I got a text message 2 weeks ago from one of my aunts that said, "I can't stop listening to this. I've been listening to it 2 or 3 times a day." Like, and I said, "Isn't this the way that my grandmother would want it?" I was able to read it.
Amen.
And able to do it. And even though, I couldn't be there in person to read it aloud, now we get to hear it over and over and over again.
I think it's a radiance in that, how you were able to use the tools that you have to do this poem and share it and get her message out, and how God is using this time to get that to so many more people for so much longer. I mean, that was just spectacular. That's beautiful. In the course of the sadness.
Yeah.
There you were. Just wow. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing how the Holy Spirit's working through this time on the air right now. I mean, there's so many amazing stories and correlations, and it's just incredible.
Really, honestly. And it's making me smile, and I just can't stop smiling. So thank you both. Thank you both. Thank you, Lord. God always has this plan every day for our lives, everybody we meet.
Yeah.
So it's just so great.
Yeah.
I thought we could just kind of switch topics, if we could, about the marketing and advising aspect of your website, because that's something that you do, something that you offer to people. And it's an amazing thing, and it can still be done right now during this time of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Virtually. So I thought you could share on that with those listening.
Sure. So first of all, it occurred to me the other day when I was talking to somebody who needs a little bit of marketing help that I need to really put a lot more information up there. So I'll let everybody who's listening know, stay tuned. I'm going to fix that. I have always sort of behind the scenes consulted. I mean, I was in corporate, but people would often say, "Hey, can you chime in on this?" Or, I wrote different books, and hey, where do we run it through? I've always sort of behind the scenes had this marketing arm where I would just step in and try and support organizations. Since the book Marketing God, and really before that, I started to realize how much I could bring forward to faith-based entities. And so I've tried to sort of capture the things I used to do in corporate and streamline them a little bit for parishes and ministries and bring those forward. So there's lots of different things that different groups need. And often when I do consulting, I'll just spend a little time up front understanding what the issue is, right? In fact, Ann, you and I talked about, like, if you read the book, tell me what the 2 big chapters are, or 3 big chapters, right? Because that'll help me know where do you need help. And then what I try and do is have different techniques, different little projects, different things that we can do that everybody can chime in on, so that as the marketing is developed, it's not sort of Donna saying, here's what it should be, but it's more us collectively saying, given what you know about your organization and what I know about marketing, let's pull those 2 things together to make a difference for your ministry. That's sort of how I try and approach it. So yeah, we've been doing more and more of it, and I will say I don't do lots of projects. I tend to do several, and I say I like to go deep. I'd rather really know an organization and really be helpful for them than to do tons of little things that may or may not make a difference. So is that helpful? Is that what you were looking for?
Extremely. No, extremely. Because you know what? Let's face it, this pandemic has brought out something that in the church was already on somewhat of, well, I shouldn't even say somewhat, it was on a decline as far as attendance, as far as people really practicing their faith, caring about their faith, identifying themselves as Catholics. So you're coming in with this book at the right time. So I think this book is going to be great for archdiocese. It's going to be great for dioceses, churches, religious organizations, nonprofits. It's a must-have. It's a must-have.
I tend to agree, but then I'm the author. So I'm not sure. Actually, in fairness, I would say I really had a co-author, and that was God.
Yeah, honestly.
Definitely is right there in the midst of that book. I'm going to jump to another little soapbox of mine, if I may, related to the book. So many people keep saying, well, what do we need to do as a Catholic Church? What do we need to do as a parish, whatever. The one thing that I always think about with brand marketing, which is what this book is speaking to, is the creation of a brand and what that brand means and how you become loyal to it, is that it has to be unique. Anything that really resonates out there has to be unique. It has to stand on its own, and that's how people become attracted to it. And the thing that my soapbox that I'm frustrated with is that so many Catholics seem to have lost sight of what makes us so unique. We have a unique presence of God. Nobody else has the Eucharist. We have this thing that is so special. And if I can just get the word out that we focus on that, just focusing on that will make such a difference and open up so many more people, not only to the presence of God, but ultimately to loyalty to Him. So I just put that out there because that's just the one that, like, how do we help the world understand how important this is? It's important from a secular perspective in terms of how we market, but it's far more important in terms of what it means for our faith and what it means for our relationship with God.
What I really like is your clarity. Honestly, it's with your writing style and with your website, there's no real scratching your head and thinking, well, what did she mean? How do I do this? I mean, you lay it out there. You do. You lay it out there. And for somebody like me, hey, that's what I need. I need that. It's very direct. So if somebody's listening, I don't care who you are, I would say this is the book for you, and go to Amazon for Marketing God. Now, where else can they find this book? Is it on Kindle too, or anything like that?
Yeah, it's on everything.
Oh, it's on everything. Oh, that's so good.
And, I have to really give a big call out to my publisher, which is OSB, Our Sunday Visitor. They did an amazing job. We keep trying to figure out other things that we can provide people, be it a workbook, be it other webinars. What can we provide to get these tools into the hands of those who need it? So the publisher, OSB, made sure that we got it out everywhere. So yes, it's on Amazon. You can, if you're a parish, you can go directly to their website and get it in bulk at a cheaper rate, of course, so that you can share it with your ministries at your church, or if you're an archdiocese, you can do that. It really is. It's in all the bookstores, although bookstores are having a hard time right now, as we know. But it is in the bookstores, Catholic bookstores, so you can go there. So yeah, it's all over, thankfully, because of OSB and the good work they did.
Praise God. Praise God. What does it mean to be an advisor? Because I know people are listening and might say, well, what does that mean in her life? How can you be an advisor to someone who might be listening who says, I want to talk to Donna. I want to email with her. I want to find out more what she can do for us personally.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. I couldn't figure out how to phrase what I was, so I called it advisor. I don't like the word consultant because that sort of feels like you go in and you sort of spread a little bit of information out and you leave, and that's not how I like to do it. I like to sort of link arms with somebody and say, let's walk through this together. Typically, if somebody has issues or they're concerned or they've got a question, you reach out, you email me or you call me, and the first little bit is on me because I just did want to help. And then if you think that there's a project there, or you think that you may need ongoing support or work, that's where I can really come in and say, okay, well, let's look at it this way. Maybe we do it like that. But I think the first thing is to just reach out and say, here's the issue I think I'm struggling with. Does this fit within, your ballpark? And as you know, Ann, I'll be pretty direct. And I'll say, yes, go outside of my frame of reference. Or, wow, that's right in my sweet spot. Here's something you might think about. Yes, in secular world, I had enormous budgets, but I have also been on boards of not-for-profits and chairman of the board for some organizations, so I know what it's like to have a small budget. So I say that because I think sometimes people will hear the big names of companies I've worked with and say, well, we can't afford her. That's not what I'm doing now. We make sure
Okay.
it's really affordable, and I have a rate for faith-based remedies that is different from anything for secular. So I try to make it really reasonable. And honestly, if you say, here's what we have, what can you do? We'll figure it out. So it's all about, this is about helping people get to God.
Yeah.
It's nice if I get paid along the way a little bit, but it's about helping people get to God, right? That's the intention.
I know Bill agrees on that. I see him nodding.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I think that when you approach business from that perspective as a nonprofit or a religious organization, first that leads to success. And so thank you for being humble and recognizing and also serving. That's a large piece of nonprofit ministry is service first. And so thank you for doing that.
Of course.
I have loved this conversation. I have loved the directions that it has gone in. I especially think I love that you talked about your middle name, Agnes, and just I'm grateful to you for, speaking about that because, there's power in a name, as you said. And as Bill said, there's power through the name that God has given you.
Right. Well, it really was a Holy Spirit thing because you read my website, Donna A. Heckler. You emphasize the A and whoo.
There's another 15-minute story.
Yeah,
that's right.
awesome.
That's right. So incredible. I wondered if, as we are getting toward the end, Donna, you went through cancer, you went through health crisis, and there might be people who are listening right now, either they're sick with something, maybe even have had the COVID-19, who knows? And maybe hearing your story of how you are still able to be so loving of God, so loving of your faith, so much wanting to share your faith and working for God, marketing him, right? That's incredible. So I wondered if you could share a little bit on that because somebody's listening, I'm sure right now, who could use some kind of encouragement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what was coming to mind as you were mentioning that were a few things. One was to not be afraid. I think, when we become ill or something bad happens, we immediately are afraid. I know I was, especially with the cancer. It's like, and really with the leg, what if I can never walk again? And I think part of what I had to learn was that God was there and I didn't need to be afraid because I could lean on him and he was going to take care of things the way he needed them taken care of. And so there's this ability to try and lose the fear by relying on God and turning to him and keeping him close. I think another thing that happens is that we're so used to being so busy that when something happens that's really difficult and we're forced to be quiet or to be silent or lives change, we're not really sure what to do with that. And I think one thing I would offer is to rest in that. Sit quietly in the quiet. Sit quietly as you're healing and listen to things around you. See what's around you. Recognize the world in a new way. And then I think a third thing that I'd offer is even in these most difficult times that you might be facing, find a way that you can be grateful. What can you be grateful for that day or in that moment? And as you find your gratitude, you're going to find that God's right there in the middle of it. So those might just be a few things I would offer. I will say I didn't do them right away when I first injured my leg. But over the course of the injury and then the illness, I learned to do those things, and they brought me immense peace as I went through, especially the cancer.
You're so wise.
Yeah,
Honestly,
awesome
I mean
stuff.
that. You are wise in the Lord.
Thank you. Thank
Tot-
you.
Totally awesome stuff. Folks, this episode, I would encourage you all to listen to it again a few times, because there's so much packed in here, and so much grace of the Holy Spirit. I know I'll be listening to it again, and I'm talking right now. So please go over to our podcast feed. It's very simple. It's just patchworkheart.podbean.com. Again, patchworkheart.podbean.com. You'll find all of our programs there, including this one. In addition to that, I really encourage you to also head over to our website, patchworkheart.org. We're offering a brand new rosary for these times, called a brand new scriptural rosary called the Fearless Scriptural Rosary, where we take all of the, or not all of them, but many of the scripture passages that encourage us to be not afraid and to fear not, and we pair them with the rosary right before each and every Hail Mary of the rosary. So please go over and check it out. It's completely free. All you got to do is go to our website. It'll pop right up, enter your email, and you can download the PDF and pray that rosary, because we're dealing with the uncertain times of COVID, and it's just a great resource for you to be able to trust in God and be not afraid during these times, as we're kind of finding ourselves in these uncertain days. But Anne and Donna, thank you so much for all the time you spent with us here today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and Donna, you have to come back.
Please do.
I would love that. I love speaking with you too. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, until next week, we thank you so much for tuning in to Patchwork Heart Ministry, the Fiat Ministry Network, or even the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation website. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of our show. Until next time, from all of us here at Patchwork Heart Ministry, I'm Bill Snyder. Keep beating to your Catholic heart.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or AndySantis2.
Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network invite you to discover your mission. A brand new in-depth monthly video series featuring engaging Catholic speakers who will challenge you to live your life abundantly. For only $25 a month, you will receive a personal monthly mission, including 3 full-length inspirational talks that build upon a new theme each month. Sign up for the Discover Your Mission tier at patreon.com/patchworkheartministry today.